Hey,
Hi,
how are you doing?
I'm good. I think this is the first year that I will have pears off the pear tree before usually they just vanish. I'm like,
Squirrels.
okay, tomorrow I will go out and get the pears. And when I go out the next day, they're all gone. So this is the first year I've actually gotten them.
Sweet.
They're they have to ripen off the tree. So
Put
they're
them in,
currently in a paper bag.
yes, in paper bags. Yep.
So we'll see.
Well, good luck. I had pear trees once, and it was just squirrel food.
Yeah. And
You know,
ground up if they fall.
yes, they'd eat them before they got ripe,
Yeah.
and race up the tree. And I thought that a good strategy might be to put cayenne on the tree trunks. I was outvoted. I have no mercy when it comes to varmints getting my food.
Yeah, that's what I put on the cables in my house to keep the cats from chewing on them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair. All right. Well, uh, welcome to Goodnight, Mr. Holmes, a podcast about the Granada Sherlock Holmes, which ran on ITV in the UK between 1984 and 1994 and ran on Masterpiece Mystery in the US around the same time. I'm Laura.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we're looking at episode 22 in the series called Silver Blades.
The story was first published in the Strand magazine, December 1892.
So we're back in Victorian times,
Yes.
as opposed to Edwardian or Georgian.
Yes. Did it seem to you that the intro music was revised? It sounded different, gloomier. And I don't know if it's been that way through the whole second season or if it started here, but it didn't have that jauntiness that I associate with season one.
Huh. I didn't notice, but I will keep my ears peeled for next time. So the episode opens on a moor, Dartmoor to be exact. We see some horses with riders running along a hillside. One of them, a dark horse with a white marking on its head, seems to be of particular interest to a variety of men watching through binoculars. Then we're at 221B. Holmes is sitting on his bed with newspapers strewn all around him, an ashtray, matches on the table, a low table next to the bed. We're looking at him from the ceiling. He's smoking his pipe, so the room looks hazy. And Brett's hair is still
yes, I was just going to say it looks better than the last episode.
Yes.
It looks like somebody has done the best that they can with his hair.
Yes, it's less choppy than it was in the previous episode, but it's still short, so he can't slick it back. It's too short for that. He gets up from his bed. He goes into the sitting room with a page of the newspaper and walks over to Watson, who's sitting at the breakfast table. "It's no good. I shall have to go," Holmes says. Go where?" Watson says. Holmes plops the newspaper down in front of Watson. "King's Pylon." And Watson picks up the paper and begins to read. "Last evening, Inspector Gregory of the Devonshire Constabulary arrested well-known racing personality Fitzroy Simpson and charged him with the murder of the trainer, John Straker." And Mrs. Hudson knocks on the door and brings in a silver tray. "2 more telegrams," she says, and Holmes opens them. And she says, "You've been bombarded with these the last couple of days." "Another one from Inspector Gregory and Colonel Ross." "Ah, the horse's owner," Watson says, glancing down at the newspaper. Holmes thanks Mrs. Hudson, calling her "my dear," which it just seems like he's in a warmer place right now.
Yeah, maybe she didn't actually raise his rent after all.
Yes, exactly. So she leaves the room, and then he says, "Watson, I have made a blunder, which I am afraid is a more common occurrence than anyone would think who only knew me through your memoirs. But the fact is, I could not believe that so remarkable a horse as Silver Blaze could disappear, especially in the seclusion of somewhere like the north of Dartmoor. From hour to hour, I expected to hear that the abductor was the murderer of John Straker and the horse had been found, but that doesn't seem to be the case." "I should be happy to go with you," Watson says.
Watson's all horse races, gambling.
Yes.
I will be coming with you.
Yes. Yes. In this episode, we find Watson's addiction. If I should not be in the way, Watson says. Oh, my dear Watson, you would confer a great favor upon me by coming. I'm sure your time will not be misspent. The case promises to be absolutely unique. We can just catch our train from Paddington. And Holmes gets up from the table and he heads back into his bedroom. And would you be so kind as to bring your field glasses? And that's Brett doing his Brett stuff. I don't know why it warrants a ha, but Jeremy Brett seemed to think it did. So Watson picks up the binoculars in their case from a side table by Holmes's chair, where they happen to be conveniently located. And Holmes is whirling around his room, getting ready. Mrs. Hudson, we're off to Dartmoor. And he's so full of excitement. I just found this scene very charming.
Yeah.
You really get the sense that Holmes looks at Mrs. Hudson as kind of a maternal figure, that he has to tell her where he's going. Like, not asking permission, but someone should know this. Someone who cares about me should know where I'm going.
Should I not come back? Somebody needs to be able to tell my brother where I am.
Yes. So the men take a train, which is puffing a great amount of steam into the air. Dressed in his deerstalker and his Inverness cape, Holmes is in the corridor, looking at his pocket watch, noting the speed of the train. He goes into his compartment where Watson's reading a newspaper, which is colored an alarming shade of Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, it's color
Pink.
changed.
Yeah.
I looked that up. The newspaper is likely the Financial Times, which started printing on pink newspaper in 1893 to distinguish itself from its rivals. So the show is like 1 year off because this is 1892. But yeah, that's
It
fine.
is. The Financial Times is still pink. It's more of a salmon color.
Yep.
And Holmes says,
since 1893.
has that remarkably colored sporting paper anything to say on the subject of our horse? Yes, Watson says. Silver Blaze is from Isonomy stock. Isonomy, repeats Holmes.
Yeah,
So,
Isonomy actually was a British racehorse.
Exactly.
Between 1877 and 1880, he was in 14 races and won 10 of them.
And then when he retired, he was put to stud.
Yeah.
And stallions who, were successful racers who then go are put to stud, they're so valuable.
Yep.
Their semen is worth like more than gold. It's incredible. Yeah, it's bizarre. So Watson continues to read and holds as brilliant a record as his famous ancestor. He's now in his 5th year and has brought in turn each of the prize of the turf to Colonel Ross, his fortunate owner. At the time of the catastrophe, he was first favored for the Wessex Cup, the odds quoted being 2-1 against. He's always been a prime favorite of the racing public and has never yet disappointed them. In spite of the unfavorable prize, a great deal of money has been placed upon him, so it is obvious, therefore, that there are many people with the strongest interest in preventing Silver Blaze from being there at the fall of the flag.
In spite of the unfavorable prize.
This is what the yeah, I don't know. I guess the prize
It's the Wessex Cup. Who cares about that?
Right, basically, yes. But a lot of people are going to make a lot of money if he wins, and there's hijinks going on to make sure he doesn't. So we next see Holmes and Watson in a trap alongside Colonel Ross. Apparently, he and Inspector Gregory have met them at the train. And Ross is pointing out the landscape to Holmes. He points out the training stable, King's Pyland, and says the trainer had lived in a cottage nearby with his wife. How long has he been with you? Holmes asks. Oh, 5 years as a jockey until he got too heavy for the weighing chair. Then 7 years as my trainer. He was a first-class man. And that, jockeys and eating disorders go hand in hand.
I bet, yeah.
They've completely normalized bulimia and they set aside areas for them to purge before they get weighed. Yeah, it's gross. But so Ross describes his stable as one that prefers quality over quantity. He's only got 5 horses, and 2 of them have been entered in the Wessex Cup, Silver Blaze and Bayard. But between us, he says, Bayard is intended to be a pacemaker. Well, with such valuable animals under his charge, I imagine your trainer, Mr. Straker, must have taken some precautions, Watson says. 3 stable lads lived with the horses, and after dark, one of the lads was always on duty in the stables while the other 2 sleep above in a loft, Ross says. Watson notices another training yard not too far away. Yes, that's Mapleton, Lord Backwater's yard. Lord Backwater owns Desperately, the second favorite for the Wessex Cup, Watson tells Holmes. Not a bad horse, says Ross. Not in the same class as Silver Blaze. Fellow called Silas Brown trains for Backwater. Can't stick the fellow himself, nor could Straker come to that. There's natural rivalry, I presume, Holmes says. Rather more than that, Ross says, and they drive on.
Yeah, a pacemaker, by the way, from what I understand, they're essentially used to set a minimum speed
Right.
for the horses.
Yep.
So they're not intended to win.
No, but they're basically paired up with the horse who is intended to win.
Yeah, and there is apparently some grumbling when the occasional pacemaker ends up winning the race.
So Holmes asks if Inspector Gregory has made any progress in finding the horse. Inspector Gregory has not. The actor who plays Inspector Gregory was also in The Princess Bride. He played Yellen, the commander of the guards.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the most famous role. I must tell you, Mr. Holmes, that at first I was not at all taken with Inspector Gregory's suggestion that you should be asked to come down here. I don't like amateurs, you see, Ross says. And the rest of the men sit in stunned silence.
Holmes is like, I am happy to charge you lots of money if that will make you feel better.
He just says, huh, and he smiles a little. But you did send me a telegram, Colonel, he points out. Well, no one else seems to be able to find my horse, Ross says. If you ask me, it's these damn gypsies wandering all over the moor. It's a perfect scandal. I've said so for years. Thus answering the question as to how far into the episode we go before the racism starts. 9 minutes and 11 seconds.
Yeah.
My men have seen every group of gypsies on Dartmoor in the last 2 days, Colonel, and searched every stable yard, quarry, and cave in South Devon, Inspector Gregory says. It's an absolute mystery. So at the training yard at King's Pylon, Holmes and Watson disembark from the trap, and Gregory follows. Holmes stops and turns to Gregory and says, my friends at Scotland Yard tell me you're rapidly making a reputation for yourself in the English detective service. I'm a keen student of your methods too, Mr. Holmes. I have 2 principal witnesses waiting for you, Gregory says. So Holmes walks around the stable. Bayard is in his stall, and so he's stroking Bayard's flank. There's a dog with, it's not that big of a dog, but he has very large teeth, barking menacingly at him.
Yeah, he looked kind of like a border collie.
He does, yeah. He does not look like, I mean, you would think it would be like a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd with that kind of menace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not.
There's I've known some small dogs who have very deep barks.
Yes, and I know that dogs don't always adhere to size limitations.
Yeah.
I tell you how many Chihuahuas used to bark at Molly, our big black Labrador.
Yeah.
And Molly would just go berserk, but you know. So Holmes goes into Silver Blaze's stall, and then he wanders around some more. Gregory opens a side door and says, in here, Mr. Holmes. Who are they? Holmes says. Edith Baxter, the maid, and Hunter, the stable boy, who was on duty Monday night. And they all sit down at a table surrounded by bridles and reins and other gear. Watson's got his binocular case resting on the table, and the maid is talking. It was just a few minutes after 9 o'clock, sir. I was carrying Mr. Hunter's supper across from the house, Edith is saying. What did the supper consist of? Holmes says. It was a dish of curried mutton, sir, she tells him. And when we flash back as she's bringing the supper across the stable yard. Suddenly, I heard a man's voice. Didn't half give me a turn, I tell you, sir. And we see a man in a dark suit with a red and black striped scarf around his neck. This is Fitzroy Simpson, the
Yeah, the scarf is important.
well-known racing personality. And the scarf looks like, to me, it looked like it had been cut off of a rugby shirt. You know, it's like those stripes. Excuse me, miss, he says. What do you want, sir? She says. Can you tell me where I am? And Fitzroy Simpson's accent's kind of posh, I noticed.
Yeah.
I'd almost made up my mind to sleep on the moor when I saw the light. This is King's Pyland training stable, sir, she tells him. What a stroke of luck, he says. I understand there's a stable lad, sleeps here at night. No doubt that's his supper you have there. I'm sure you wouldn't be too proud to earn yourself the price of a new dress, would you? And he reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a note. See, the boy has this tonight, and you shall have the prettiest frock money can buy. I couldn't, she says. And she ducks over to a window and she starts banging on it. Ned, Ned. So Ned Hunter is the stable boy. He comes to the window. He opens it. There's a man stopped me out there. I'm ever so frightened. What did he want? Ned says. He asked after you, she tells him. He asked me to give you something. What was it? Ned says. I don't know. It was white. Where is he now? Ned says. He's gone. You must get back to the house quick. Tell the governor, she says. He says, and off she runs. So as Ned is lighting a lamp, Fitzroy Simpson comes over to the window. Good evening. I want a word with you, he says to Ned. What business have you here? Ned says. It's a business that may put something in your pocket, my lad. Now you've 2 horses entering the Wessex Cup, Silver Blaze and Bayard. Let me have the straight tip and you won't be the loser. Is it the fact that at the weights, Bayard can give the other 100 yards in 5 furlongs and the stable put, blah, blah. Ned is furious. We don't need any touts around here. Get out, he shouts. So a tout is someone who offers the betting public racing tips in exchange for a percentage of their winnings. They spy on racing practices and then they sell that information to the people who are betting on races.
Okay.
Yes. Ned and the vicious dog leave the building. After him, Ned says to the dog. And that's the last we see of Fitzroy Simpson for a while.
Not the last we see of his scarf.
No.
The last we see.
Back at the table where he's being interviewed, Ned says, the governor and others came down soon enough. We found not a sight or sound of the man. When you let the dog out, did you leave the door open behind you? Watson says. Oh, excellent, Watson. Excellent. It is just the point I was going to make, Holmes says. I locked it.
Leaving the room.
Yes. Yes, he's wandering into another room.
Great job. Bye.
I locked the door behind me, sir. I swear it, Ned says. Good lad, Watson says. Holmes, as we said, has walked into the next room. He wipes he goes up to a window and he wipes his finger along the sash and then
tastes it.
He tastes it.
And there's never anything said about like what? Do you do that at home? What are you doing?
Because clearly this is Jeremy Brett improvising. Does Fitzroy Simpson admit to all this? He says. He denies nothing, Gregory says. He says he came for information. What about the white paper? Holmes asks. He says it was a £5 note, Gregory says. So Holmes goes back into the room with the table and he sits down across from the maid. What happened next? Well, sir, it was about dawn when the mistress came into my bedroom and told me to come with her. Well, when she woke, she found Mr. Straker's bed empty, Edith says. And we see the 2 women running across the yard into the stable. Silver Blaze is not there. Heavens, says Mrs. Straker, the horse is gone and the bridle. And they run back to where Ned is sleeping at the table. He's got his head in his arms and the remains of his dinner is next to him. Mrs. Straker's shaking him and yelling at him to wake up. He's not responding. And she starts slapping him around a little bit. And this kid just will not wake up.
Yeah, which is very upsetting.
Yes. Wake the boys, she tells Edith. And Edith rouses the other 2 stable boys. And everyone runs across the moors. They find Straker's overcoat hanging from the branch of a bush. And a little further down, Straker's body lying on the ground.
But they're running across the moor for like a wild, to the point where I was like, they, how have they decided this is the way they need to go?
I know. Yes. And I have some notes on
Because
Moors in general. They're big.
yeah, and they're not like looking around and trying to see it. It's like it's very directed.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How did you know we went this way?
The magic of television. um, so they find Straker's body lying on the ground. His head has this great big bloody gash on it. And Fitzroy Simpson's scarf is next to him. There's also a small knife with blood on it, and he's got an injury to his leg as well. He was dead, sir, Edith says to Holmes. His head was all knocked in. It was terrible. And Holmes just puts a consoling hand on Edith in this rare moment of sympathy.
Yeah.
It was touching.
Like
yeah. It was a terrible blow on the head from some blunt instrument that had killed him, Gregory said. It's clear that he defended himself most vigorously. The blood-stained knife, as to the wound on the thigh, who can tell? Well, it is possible that the wound on the thigh could have been caused as Straker fell, Watson says. This lad here was drugged, Gregory says. No shit. Appreciable quantities of powdered opium were found in his curry. Did all the household eat the same dish? Watson asked. Yes, sir. I made it myself and served it, Edith tells him.
And Ned's like, oh, I put that in myself. It's the only way. Well,
Holmes, completely ignoring the chain of custody, whips out Fitzroy Simpson's scarf and puts it on the table. The gentleman was wearing that scarf when he talked to me. I'd swear it on a Bible, sir, Edith says. Holmes gives the scarf to Watson, says thank you, and then he gets up to leave. And he's stopped by the loud barking and growling of this otherwise adorable-looking guard dog. Ned comes out and quiets the dog, and the three men go to the doorway of the building. My theory is that Simpson was under some strong obligation to hobble or otherwise incapacitate this horse so that he would be unable to run in the Wessex Cup, Gregory says. Clever move, that, putting opium in the boy's food, and easy enough through that window, Watson says. Then it was simple, Gregory says. He obtained a duplicate key, led out the horse. It was his bad luck that Straker was alert enough to catch him up on the moor, and in the struggle, the horse bolted. There's no proof that Simpson killed Straker, Holmes says, and they start walking across the stable yard. Well, the evidence against him is very strong. He was undoubtedly here on some devious business. He poisoned the stable lad. He had in his hand a heavy stick weighted with lead, and his scarf was found in the dead man's hand. And he went as pale as death when I confronted him with that fact, Gregory says. I really think we have enough to go before the jury. Holmes disagrees. A clever counsel would tear it all to rags. Has a duplicate...
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It doesn't, no. Has a duplicate key been found in Simpson's possession? No, says Gregory. Well, what chemist sold him the powdered opium? Holmes asks. And above all, how could he, a stranger in this district, hide a horse, and such a horse as Silver Blade? I
thought the theory was that the horse bolted and could be anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I agree that the evidence is circumstantial, Gregory says, but I think the net is drawn pretty tightly around Fitzroy Simpson, and I believe he is our man. What sort of fellow is he, and why would he do such a thing? Watson wants to know. Fitzroy Simpson is a man of excellent birth and education, Gregory says, which explains the posh accent.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he has squandered a fortune on the turf, which has put him in the hands of moneylenders and unscrupulous bookmakers. Plenty of those sharks in the racing world, Watson says. I didn't know you were a betting man, Watson, Holmes says.
And this is why you shouldn't expect consistency from Arthur Conan Doyle.
What? Oh, just the occasional flutter, Watson says disingenuously. So, yes, now we know what his addiction is. I presume an inventory has been made of what Straker had in his pockets at the time of his death, Holmes says. I have the things themselves in the sitting room if you would care to see them, Gregory tells him. So, in the sitting room, Gregory opens a box and the men pull out various items. Holmes holds up a small scalpel-like knife with an ivory handle. Weiss and Company.
It almost looks like a palette knife or something.
I've got notes on this, yeah. Why from the bloodstains, I presume this is the knife that was found in the dead man's grasp. And Gregory confirms this. Holmes passes the knife to Watson. This is what we call a cataract knife, Watson says. Very delicate blade devised for very delicate work. Strange thing for a man to take on so rough an expedition. Holmes, especially, as it wouldn't even shut in his pocket. It's not a folding knife, in other words. So the knife Watson's holding up is a keratome blade, which is a type of scalpel used in ocular surgery for making incisions in the cornea. The tip was guarded by a disc of cork, which we found beside the body, Gregory says. You impress me, Inspector, Holmes says. Thank you.
That'll hold nicely.
He is. He's real. Yeah. Mrs. Straker says it had been on the dressing table. It was probably the nearest thing to hand at the time. And of course, my question is, why would a horse trainer have a scalpel used in eye surgery on his dressing table?
You ask the strangest questions, Laura.
I know.
Doesn't every horse trainer have one of these?
So Holmes begins going through the other items found with Straker. Corn merchant's bill, instructions from Colonel Ross. What have we here? A milliner's account for 37 pounds, 15 shillings for a Madame Le Sourier of Bond Street, London, to a William Derbyshire. Mrs. Straker tells us that Derbyshire was a friend of her husband's and on occasion had his letters addressed here, Gregory says, and he passes the bill over to Watson. 22 guineas, somewhat heavy for a single costume. Mrs. Derbyshire had rather expensive taste, Watson says.
That's equal today to 3,776 pounds.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't. Wow. That is some dress.
Yeah, and my following note was, that seems high, but whatever. And then, Watson says, yeah, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't even imagine paying $3,000 for a wedding dress. Good Lord. I mean, obviously I'm cheap, but well, there appears to be nothing more to learn here, Inspector. Shall we move on to the scene of the crime? Holmes says, and they leave. Holmes takes another quick look around the sitting room. In the hallway, Mrs. Straker, who's dressed in black mourning, comes up to them. Have you got them, Inspector? She asks. Is there any more news? I'm afraid not, Gregory says, but Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson have come down from London to help us. I assure you we're doing everything possible. I wish you good luck, Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Straker says. Oh, thank you, madam, and my commiserations on your great loss. Surely we've met at a garden party in Plymouth some time ago, Holmes says. And I'm trying to imagine Holmes at a garden party and failing. No, sir, you are mistaken, Mrs. Straker says. I could have sworn it, Holmes insists. You wore a costume of dove-colored silk with ostrich feather trimming.
Sounds awful.
I know. I never had such a dress, sir, Mrs. Straker says, and she starts to cry. That quite settles it. Thank you, he says.
Okay. Well, thanks. Bye.
Bye. So back out on the moor, Holmes and Gregory are talking about Straker's overcoat, which had been placed to hang on the bush rather than blown up into it. There's a constable pacing about near where Straker's body had been found. Holmes is very consternated. No, 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 he says, and he sighs, and he begins leaping down the hill. So many people have trampled around this land. There have been many people here, and he's gesturing exasperatedly. That piece of matting has been placed there, and we've all stood upon that, Gregory says, following him. Not the general public, Holmes replies. So yeah, good job keeping the looky-loos away from the crime scene. Gregory begins unzipping a carpet bag he's been carrying. I have in this bag one of the boots John Straker wore, one of Fitzroy Simpson's shoes, and a cast horseshoe of silver blaze. And again, the chain of custody for all this evidence is completely non-existent.
Yeah, fortunately, it doesn't really matter at that point in time.
No. Gregory pulls all these items out of the bag to show Holmes, and Holmes just gives them back to him and flings himself down on the mat, pulling it towards him, and thus also interfering with the crime scene.
Yeah, yes.
staring at the ground, and he finally pulls out an object from the mud and passes it back to Gregory. And then he continues to hover his hand over the mud as if clues are going to come zipping up into his palm. Then he digs out another object and hands it to Gregory, who passes it back to Watson. A half-burnt wax vesta and a candle end, Watson says.
Yeah.
So,
were you gonna wax?
yeah,
vest? Okay.
wax vesta was a case that held strike anywhere matches to prevent accidental combustion. Pocket vestas were meant to be worn on the man's watch chain. I cannot understand how I came to overlook them, Gregory says. Oh, they were invisible, buried in the mud. I only saw them because I was looking for them, Holmes says offhandedly.
He stands up and you can see Watson just beaming with pride behind him.
Yes. You expected to find them, Gregory says. I thought it not unlikely, Holmes says. I'm afraid there are no more tracks, Gregory says. I've examined the ground for 100 yards in every direction. What a pleasant evening, Holmes says. I think I'll take a walk, stretch my legs. Watson? Yes, indeed, Watson says. I'll take this for luck, Holmes says, taking the horseshoe. And off they stride, deeper into the moor.
And Gregory looks so sad to be left out.
Yes! So, moors, right, they're really desolate. I've had to go up to Yorkshire for work. And one time I decided to take a walk along one of the Yorkshire moors. And let me tell you, the overwhelming sense of emptiness and isolation, which is frequently accentuated by the wind because there's nothing to block the wind, it's just almost unbearable.
Wow.
Yeah. I know a lot of people love moorscapes, but I just found them bleak and kind of horrifying. They're so vast and you're so small.
Yeah.
And you feel like anything could happen and no one would ever find you.
Yeah. I feel like that about the ocean.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
But because it just stretches off into the distance, I also kind of love it for that reason, because you're looking out at this vastness that, will cheerfully kill you.
Yes.
And it just makes you feel so small, like in a good way. Like, okay, all of these problems that I might have had, everything I'm anxious about,
pale.
It's so small.
Yes.
Next to this.
Yes. Also on Dartmoor in particular, which is in Devon, so way south of Yorkshire, there are mires. And we'll come across those in Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah, which is in I think like 3 episodes down the road.
Okay, and that takes us back to Dartmoor.
The Great Griffin Mire.
Yes, the Great Griffin Mire. And on Dartmoor, there are feral ponies, like the ones that in the U.S. we have on Assateague and Chincoteague Islands in Virginia. And the feral ponies on Dartmoor sometimes get trapped in these bogs. So it is a dangerous place.
Yeah, I think doesn't Stapleton mention that in Hound of the Baskervilles?
Yep. So we see Holmes and Watson as these two tiny figures. Watson's holding onto his hat against the wind, walking across this enormous plain. They look like bugs against the landscape. Watson pulls out his binoculars. Holmes's Inverness cape is billowing behind him, and Holmes sits down on an outcropping of rock, and Watson joins.
We have no idea what Watson's been looking at through the binoculars.
Nothing, no.
Why do you have those out?
Because they're Chekhov's binoculars. because he asked him to bring them, and he doesn't use them for anything.
No, they're not really needed at all.
And Watson's unfolding a map. Suppose that Silver Blaze broke away. Where would he have gone? If he'd run loose on the moor, he'd surely have been seen by now. Perhaps the gypsy theory is correct, Watson says. No, Holmes says. A horse is a most gregarious creature. Now, he did not go back to King's Pyland to his own stable, so he must have gone to Mapleton. Now, let us use that as a working hypothesis. The ground around here is very hard and dry, but over there in that hollow, it must have been very wet on Monday night. If our supposition is correct, he must have crossed it. And he jumps to his feet and begins walking again with Watson behind him. He stops at a little hillock and he calls Watson over. there is a hoof print, which matches the horseshoe that Holmes took from Gregory as quote unquote good luck. By George, look at that, Watson says. You see the value of imagination, Holmes says. It is the one quality which Inspector Gregory lacks. We imagined what might have happened, acted upon the supposition, and find ourselves justified. Let us proceed. And this strikes me as a little backwards. Like you're leaping to conclusions and then construing the clues to support your assumptions. But further on towards Maple. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was agreeing with you.
Okay. Watson gestures to another patch of mud where there's another hoof print. Then there are a few more. Holmes kneels down. Horse and man turned, he says. At Mapleton, once they get there, it's very richly endowed, orderly stabled, landscaped yards.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
Yeah, it looks a lot like the Sandringham stud that Queen Elizabeth used to run. It is a far cry from King's Pyland's kind of messy but comfortable environment.
Yeah.
More horses, too. As Holmes and Watson enter, a stableman yells at them, "No loitering around here. Haven't you got eyes in your head?" I only wanted to ask a question, Holmes says. Should I be too early to see Mr. Silas Brown if I was to call around here at 5:30 tomorrow morning? I shouldn't be speaking to you by rights, the man says. So Holmes sighs and he pulls out some coins.
I love the sigh.
Like, yeah, I know it's expected of me now. The man takes the coins. Bless you, sir. You're a gentleman, he says. Mr. Brown's the early bird around here, all right. And just then, Silas Brown comes across the yard and chastises the stableman.
Yeah, also Silas Brown is here right now, and so you can just get your money.
Now, what the devil do you two want around here? He asks Holmes and Watson. And to me, he looks a little bit like the Duke of Kent. He's got a skinny face that's wrinkled and clearly a bald head under his hat. Just a few minutes of your time, Holmes says. Be off with you, or you'll find the dog on your heels. Why should I talk to every gadabout stranger on the moor? Brown growls. It may save you instant dismissal from Lord Backwater's service and a stiffish prison sentence, Holmes says.
And Brown's like, well, okay then.
Yeah, after a bit of a stare down, Brown turns away and Holmes follows him. Watson stays back to stand guard as Holmes instructs him. And I was thinking about like all of the suspicious activity that these stable personnel are trying to guard against, strangers coming into your stable to suss out your horses so that they can run back and sell clues to the people who are betting. So it's no wonder they're paranoid.
Yeah.
Even, no wonder that Edith was paranoid to see Simpson.
Yeah. Although, just seeing a strange man showing up in your yard at night.
That too. Yes.
While you're all alone.
As a woman, yes. So we go inside Silas Brown's office, which has paintings and photographs of horses and jockeys. And Holmes takes off his deerstalker hat. And again, his close cropped hair stands up a little bit, which takes some of the effect away from the Sherlock Holmes presence.
Yes.
Early Tuesday morning, you were about the yard as usual when you saw a horse on the moor. When you approached it, you realized it wasn't a strange horse at all. It was one that you knew very well. Your first instinct was to lead Silver Blaze back to King's Pyland. But then the devil put other ideas into your head. You had a chance to make a great deal of money. It occurred to you that if you were to hide the horse, Brown looks incensed. You've been watching me, haven't you? You've been spying on me, sir.
Holmes looks so happy at that.
Yes. And
yes, then, I am that good.
Brown's expression changes a little bit. He's been caught, but he wants to make the best of it. Look, sir, I do what you want. He gets up into Holmes's face with his walking stick. If it's money you want, you shall have it. And Holmes removes the stick. It says, you will do exactly as I say. So next we see Watson and Holmes headed back across the moor to King's Pyland. A more perfect compound of the bully, coward, and sneak than Master Silas Brown I've seldom met with, Holmes is saying. He has the horse then, Watson says. Of course, Holmes says. But his stables are being searched, Watson objects. An old faker like him knows many a dodge, Holmes says. Watson, I don't know whether you observed, but Colonel Ross's manner to me has been somewhat cavalier. I'm inclined to have a little amusement at his expense.
I'd like to be an asshole to him.
Yes. Okay. Say nothing to him about the horse. So Watson agrees, and they keep walking. Back at King's Pyland, Ross is sitting with Gregory at a small table. We found traces which show that a party of gypsies encamped on Monday night within a mile of where the murder took place, Gregory is saying. Fitzroy Simpson may well have had an understanding with them over hiding the horse. Nevertheless, I think I owe it to the public to remove Silver Blaze's name from the entrance for the cup, Ross says, at which point Holmes and Watson enter. No, certainly not, Colonel. I should let the name stand, Holmes says. But I've already withdrawn Bayard, Ross says. But I have every hope that Silver Blaze will start on Saturday. Have your jockey in readiness, Holmes says. I'm very glad to have your opinion, sir, Ross says. That is a minor point compared to the question of who killed John Straker, Holmes says. Doubtless you will be devoting yourself to that problem, Ross says, smiling. On the contrary, Dr. Watson and I are taking the night express to London. We've had the most charming little breath of your fresh country air. Ross laughs in disbelief. So you've despaired already of arresting the murderer of poor John Straker, he says, getting up from the table. There are certain grave difficulties, Holmes says.
We need to commission some special handcuffs for the killer.
Right. Do you have a photograph of Straker? And Gregory hands him one. And Holmes heads out the door, whispering to Watson, linger. I must say I'm rather disappointed in our London consultant, Ross says. I don't see that we're any further than when he came. At least you have his assurance that your horse will run, Watson points out. I should prefer to have the horse, Ross says.
I love that.
Yes. Holmes is outside by the carriage that they're going to take back to the train station, and there's a pen of sheep next to it. Ned is standing there, and Holmes asks him, who looks after these sheep? I do, sir, says Ned. Have you noticed anything amiss of late? Holmes asks. Well, sir, it's not much account, but 3 of them have gone lame, Ned tells him. Thank you, Holmes says. Watson has come out to join him, and they get into the carriage. A long shot, Watson, a very long shot. Inspector, I would like to recommend to you the singular epidemic among the sheep.
They have foot and mouth disease. What is wrong with the mutton?
You really consider that to be important, Ross says. Exceedingly so, Holmes says, and they drive off. Is there any other point to which you wish to draw my attention, Mr. Holmes? Gregory says. To the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, Holmes says. But the dog did nothing in the nighttime, Ross says. That is the curious incident, Holmes says.
And we watched this episode for that exchange.
Yes, it's the whole point. Yes.
It's all done. We can turn it off now.
At the Wessex Cup, as spectators are entering the grounds, Ross is wandering around, looking anxiously for his horse. He passes a stall where a dark horse is. He's got his head out the window of the stall. Not finding Silver Blaze, he approaches Holmes. Where the devil is my horse, Holmes? Holmes tries to shush him, but Ross is not having it. Where the devil is he? I suppose, Colonel, that you would recognize him if you saw him, Holmes says. No, my own horse. Ross is indignant. I have been on the turf for 20 years, and I've never been asked such a damn fool question before. Why, a child would know Silver Blaze with the white star on his forehead and mottled hind leg. I suppose you realize if my horse doesn't run, quite apart from being lynched by the crowd, I should be up before the stewards, probably warned off every racecourse in England for life, reputation ruined. And they're paused by the stall with the dark horse in it. Oh, let us hope it does not come to that, Colonel, Holmes says. Watson crosses through the yard, led by Ned, who also has a bucket. This, Colonel, is your horse, Holmes says, petting the nose of the dark horse in the stall. But that's not my horse, Holmes, Ross says. Good God, man, what have you done? And Holmes opens the door of the stall, takes the horse's bridle. He then puts his hand in Ned's bucket and squeezes out a large yellow sponge. He rubs the horse's forehead and reveals the white marking.
Yeah, he does a man with a twisted lip on.
Yes, exactly. I was like, this is not the first time we've seen that yellow sponge.
Yep.
There, Colonel, is the silver blaze. I found him in the hands of a faker and brought him to the course just as he was.
He was pretending to be homeless, and he made a lot of money that way.
Yeah. Ross is astounded. You take my breath away, Mr. Holmes. And the crowd is clamoring as the horses go into their slips on the racetrack. Bets are being placed on Silver Blaze. The bookmakers have signs, always pays, and slogans of that kind. And I noticed one that said, John Lucan never owes. And again, I think it's a reference to Lord Lucan, the gambler.
Yeah.
His kid's nanny. So Holmes walks up to one of the bookmakers and places a bet on Silver Blaze. If he runs, my lord, says the bookmaker, to win or to place? To win, of course, Holmes says. Any more like you at home, the bookmaker says as Holmes walks away. And the race begins. Ross is shouting, what's the matter with the damn horse? What have you done to him, Holmes? He seems to be missing his pacemaker, Holmes says. I should never have withdrawn Bayard, Ross says. But Silver Blaze is in the lead. The jockey's cap blows off as they cross the finish line.
Wait, we have to stop and get it.
Ross is enormously pleased. You've done wonders, Mr. Holmes, and I owe you 1,000 apologies for having doubted your ability.
According to the book Seabiscuit, which I read years ago, the horses actually enjoy the racing. They like winning.
Wow.
And they know when they've won.
That's wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought they would have enjoyed it. Well, now you've done me a great service by recovering my horse. You do me greater still if you could lay your hands on the murderer of John Straker. I have done so, says Holmes. What? Where is he then? Ross says, and he's patting his horse. He's here, Holmes says. Someone who's now present at this very moment. I quite recognize that I'm under obligations to you, Mr. Holmes, but this is either a very bad joke or an insult. The real murderer, Colonel, is standing immediately behind you. The horse, Ross says. Yes, the horse, Holmes says.
You have the right to remain silent, Silver Blaze. Can you nay? Cannon will be against you.
And it may lessen his guilt if I say it was done entirely in self-defense and that John Straker was a man quite unworthy of your trust. And Ross looks perplexed and stricken. The jockey goes into a little office to a weighing chair. Number 4, sir, winner, he says as he sits down. The jockey looks big to be a jockey.
Yeah. Also, why is the weighing done after the race and not before?
I think it's probably done both.
Okay.
In the winner's circle, Ross is presented with.
Why would it be done both times, though?
Actually, that is a good question. No, it should have been done beforehand.
Yeah.
I don't understand racing.
Yeah, I
The only comparable situation where I've ever heard of a weighing chair is, again, at Sandringham during Christmas. The guests have to weigh themselves before and after to show that the hospitality has been sufficient. So if you're a princess with an eating disorder, this does not go over well. So in the winner's circle, Ross is presented with the trophy. He's applauded. Holmes goes to redeem his bet. Ross holds up the trophy and he basks. Back at King's Pyland, Holmes and Watson have been invited to.
There's a woman who presents the trophy. We never see her face. We just see her from behind. And Ross is like, I won this last year too. Do you remember?
It is quite a scene. So at dinner, Watson and Ross are in white tie. Holmes is not. I confess, Holmes is saying, when we came down to King's Pyland, I was convinced that Fitzroy Simpson was the true culprit. All the newspaper and police reports seemed to point to it. It was only when I entered the trainer's house that the immense significance of the curried mutton occurred to me. Powdered opium kernel is by no means tasteless. Quite correct, Watson says. The flavor is not distasteful, but it is perceptible. Were it mixed with an ordinary dish, in other words, a flavorless English dish, the eater would undoubtedly detect it, but would probably eat no more.
So like typical British cooking.
Right. Boiled ham. Curry was the exact medium with which to disguise the taste. So it must have been Straker or his wife, Ross says.
That's
remember.
Very lucky for Straker.
Yes. I remember you spoke of a dog. The dog that didn't bark in the night, Watson says. Well, someone has been into the stable and taken out the horse. The dog had not barked, so obviously this midnight visitor was someone the dog knew well. I was already convinced that it was Straker, Holmes says. But for what purpose should he take out the horse and drug his own stable boy, Ross says. A dishonest one, obviously. There are cases before now, where trainers have made great sums of money by laying against their own horses and then preventing them from winning, Watson says. Well, sometimes you get a pulling jockey, I will say that, Ross says. And sometimes by surer and more subtler means. This singular knife, and Holmes pulls the scalpel out of his pocket, which was found in the dead man's hand and which no sane man would use as a weapon.
Also, no sane man would have that knife just hanging out in his pocket.
No. Yes, only used for the most delicate of operations, Watson confirms. It was used for a delicate operation that night, Holmes says. He gets up and he goes to the sideboard where there's a fruit bowl, and he picks up an apple and returns to the table. As you know, Colonel, with your wide knowledge of turf matters, it is possible to make a slight nick in the horse's tendon and to do it subcutaneously. And Holmes pierces the apple with the cataract knife. Any slight lameness will be put down to a strain in training or a bruise, never foul play. And he hands the apple to Ross. Villain! The damn scoundrel, Ross says. Not an operation to be done in the stable, Holmes says. And the maid has come into the dining room. She's coming around with plates of soup. And Holmes puts his hand up and says, none for me. So sensitive a creature was the horse that it would arouse the soundest of sleepers. I've been blind, and Gregory too. Of course, that's why he needed the candle and struck the match. When I examined Straker's belongings, I was fortunate enough to discover not only the method of the crime, but also the motive. He pulls out the milliner's bill. Most men do not carry other people's bills in their pockets. From this, I concluded that Straker was living a double life. The nature of the bill shows you there was a woman in the case, and a woman of expensive tastes. Liberal though you are with your servants, I'm sure they're not able to afford 22 guinea walking dresses for their ladies. Mrs. Straker never had one by her own admission. When I visited Bond Street the other morning, I showed Madame Lesurrier this photograph of Straker, and Holmes takes the photo out of his pocket. She recognized him as an extremely good customer called William Derbyshire, with a very dashing young wife with a partiality for expensive dresses. Woman! Exclaimed Ross. I suppose it was she who plunged him head over heels into debt and left him to this miserable plot. I mean, he didn't have to live a double life.
Yeah.
He plunged.
These were he made these choices.
Yes, he plunged himself into debt. Straker,
but if there's a woman around, let's just blame her for men's actions.
Right. Yes, always handy. Straker let out Silver Blaze into the hollow where his light would not be visible from the yard. Simpson, in his flight, had dropped his scarf. Straker picked it up, with the idea, no doubt, that he might use it in securing the horse's leg. Straker was able to light his candle, but just as he had the knife ready, the horse lashed out and caught him a fatal blow on the forehead, Holmes says, and we watch the scene being enacted.
Although, obviously, not the actual striking on the forehead.
No.
Special effects and stuff.
Why, Watson asks, and why did the horse lash out so suddenly? Frightened by the candle? The knife? Well, animals have a strange instinct. They seem to know when some mischief is intended, Ross says, and he's slurping his soup very loudly.
I have that note too.
My final shot, I must confess, was a long one. It struck me that such an astute man as Straker would not undertake this tendon nicking without a little practice. And then Holmes goes, "Meh."
He's so weird.
I know he is. Watson grins. The sheep, of course. Wonderful, my dear Holmes, Ross exclaims. Now you've explained it all but one thing, the horse. Now, where was the horse? Ross says. Well, I think we must have a little amnesty in that direction, Colonel, Holmes says. It bolted and was looked after by one of your neighbors, Watson says. And Ross nods, understanding that he should stop asking questions. Now that his horse is back and the murder of Straker is solved, and he rises from the table and picks up his glass. Gentlemen, I give you a toast to Silver Blaze, coupled with the names of my friends, Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And Watson and Holmes stand up and toast with him, and the episode ends. Everybody's happy. So this story was the inspiration for a 2003 novel called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
I haven't read.
Oh, I did read it. Yeah.
Okay.
A neuroatypical boy who really likes Sherlock Holmes solves the mystery of a dead dog, but he also has to deal with his father not understanding his condition, etc. It was turned into a play, which ran on the West End and then Broadway, and the Broadway production won a lot of awards, including the Tony.
Wow.
Yeah. And the best character from the reviews that I read, the best character in the play was a trained rat who was the pet of the boy. And the rat was like so good on Broadway.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Rats are so smart.
Yeah, they are. They apparently do make really good pets. They're very interactive with humans.
I've been tempted from time to time. I knew a young woman who had 3 rats in a, like, she kept them in this multi-tiered cage. It was like a tower. And they were so sweet and so curious and so friendly. It's just their tails look like worms, and I can't deal with it. I just can't deal with it.
I understand. I think part of the issue a lot of people have with opossums.
Yes, that too. I can't deal with opossums either, for the same reason, the weird naked tail. Anyway, that Silver Blaze.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. We were talking about this before we started recording. This is a pretty self-contained story. There wasn't a lot of outside research to do.
No. And I checked. I looked in Bending the Willow. I looked in the annotated. There's just nothing there.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's got that one quote.
Yeah, and the one quote is worth the whole, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I like the way that they filmed that, because they didn't make a point of, and here is the dog barking. It's just, there's a dog in the stable and it's barking.
Right. Barking, like, whatever they train the dog with. And I noticed at one point, Ned getting down on his knees and, attempting to quiet the dog. He was surreptitiously feeding the dog treats to reward the actor dog for having a good job growling.
I also noticed the dog didn't stand up, so you couldn't see that its tail was probably wagging.
Wagging, yes. I wondered about that actually as I was watching those scenes. Yeah. I wonder if dogs like acting too, the same way that horses like racing.
I think they just like having a job.
You're right about that. I think I've told you, the dog that I was referring to earlier, Molly, the black lab, she was a dog at the Staten Island Ferry who was a bomb sniffer.
Yeah.
And her owner had to retire her and get a new dog, and she was so jealous that the new dog got to go off to work and she didn't work anymore. She was so sad, which is why we adopted her, to
Yeah.
kind of give her something new to think about.
Yes. She seemed very happy with you.
Yes, she was. It was almost like it wasn't quite hospice care. It was like we were running a retirement home for a dog. Anything else that you think we need to add to this episode?
No, it really is pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what have we got for next week?
That's all from us this week. If you've enjoyed the show and haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to support us, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends. And join us next week when we'll be discussing Wisteria Lodge.
I love wisteria, just as an aside. It's a lovely plant. Anyway, yes, join us next week
On our gardening show.
Yes. Talk to you then.
Bye.
Bye.